Italy, the land of pizza, pasta, and well, if you've ever visited Milan and then traveled to Naples, you might have felt like you just entered a completely different country. And honestly, you wouldn't be wrong. The north and south of Italy don't just look different, they think differently, vote differently, and even view each other with suspicion. For most of history, Italy wasn't the single, boot-shaped country we know today. It wasn't even close. Instead, it was a chaotic mix of independent states, powerful kingdoms, and city-states, all with their own rulers, laws, and cultures. The irony is that they were often even competing, fighting, or ignoring each other entirely. And here's where things started to split. The north, in particular, was dominated by powerful city-states. Venice, for example, had one of the most advanced trade networks in the world, controlling commerce across the Mediterranean. Milan, on the other hand, thrived in banking and industry. Their prime locations made it easy for them to interact with neighboring countries like France, Austria, and Switzerland. The south, on the other hand, found itself under the control of outsiders like the Spanish, French, and Austrians. These rulers often focused on their own interests, leaving the local people to fend for themselves. The economy in the south was mainly agricultural. However, the land wasn't owned by the farmers who worked it. Instead, vast estates were controlled by a small group of nobles and the church. This system, known as feudalism, meant that most people worked the land without owning any part of it. They had to give a significant portion of their harvest to the landowners. So, while the nobles lived comfortably, collecting rents and taxes, the majority of the population still struggled to make ends meet. Anyways, it was the mid-1800s, and Italy was still a collection of separate states. But the Kingdom of Sardinia, particularly its region of Piedmont, wanted to change that. Their prime minister, Count Camillo di Cavour, was a smart guy though. He knew that just hoping for unification wouldn't make it happen. He needed some powerful friends. So, he looked around and saw an opportunity in the Crimean War, which was happening in the 1850s. In case you didn't know, this war had big players like Britain and France teaming up against Russia. Long story short, Cavour thought, if we join this fight on the side of Britain and France, maybe they'll help us out later. After the war, Cavour gained influence at the peace conference, but knew diplomacy alone wouldn't unify Italy. Austria still controlled parts of the country, so he struck a secret deal with Napoleon III of France. If Austria attacked Piedmont, France would intervene. As planned, Austria took the bait. France stepped in, and together they defeated Austria, forcing it to give up some of its Italian territories. This victory fueled the Unification movement, inspiring other states to join. With leaders like Giuseppe Garibaldi rallying the south, Italy gradually came together. By 1861, most of the country was unified under King Victor Emmanuel II. You'd think that bringing all these different regions together into one country would help close the gap, right? Yeah, not really. If anything, it made things worse. When Italy was unified, the north was, as we already are aware, ahead in industrialization. But instead of helping the south catch up, the new government, which was largely controlled by northern elites, focused on making the north even stronger. The government introduced high taxes that hit the south hard. Many southern farmers, already struggling, couldn't keep up. Instead of distributing the land to the local farmers, the administration sold it off, often to northern investors. This meant that many southern farmers remained landless or had to work for new landowners, keeping them in poverty. Meanwhile, the south, the region's infrastructure was still underdeveloped, with inadequate roads and limited railways. High illiteracy rates prevailed, limiting the population's ability to engage in skilled labor or administrative roles. With the government unable to maintain control, a power vacuum spread across southern Italy, especially in Sicily. Local landowners, merchants, and farmers found themselves vulnerable to theft, corruption, and violence. In this chaotic environment, small groups emerged, offering protection. One such organization was the mafia. Originally, the term mafioso in 19th century Sicily signified someone who was fearless, enterprising, and proud. However, over time, the same groups began to exert control over local businesses and communities. They engaged in extortion, smuggling, and wielded significant political influence, becoming the de facto authority in many towns. By the late 19th century, the very problem the mafia claimed to solve had become its most profitable business. Feeling abandoned and seeking better opportunities, many Southerners decided to leave. Between 1880 and 1921, approximately 4.2 million Italians emigrated to the United States, with the vast majority hailing from the Mezzogiorno. The trend of leaving home didn't stop there. After World War II, from the 1950s to the 1970s, around 4 million Southerners moved within Italy, mainly to the industrialized cities in the north. Cities like Milan, Turin, and Genoa became popular destinations as factories needed workers. If you're thinking, wait, this sounds like East and West Germany, You're not wrong. After World War II, West Germany, backed by the US, embraced capitalism and got massive aid through the Marshall Plan. East Germany, under Soviet rule, adopted a planned economy which led to stagnation over time. Even the USA had regional divides. The North industrialized early, while the South remained agrarian for longer. These economic and social differences contributed to tensions leading up to the Civil War. Back to Italy. The North-South divide remains, even after more than 160 years of unification, a significant issue. Northern Italy continues to lead the nation in economic performance. In 2022, Lombardy's GDP per capita was €44,000, significantly higher than regions like Campania, which stood at €19,000. Unemployment rates further highlight this disparity. While the national average was 7.6% in 2023, southern regions such as Campania, Calabria, and Sicily faced rates between 15.8% and 17.4%, contrasting sharply with northern regions like Trentino-South Tyrol, which enjoyed a low 2.8% unemployment rate. The North's industrial prowess is evident, contributing over 70% of Italy's total manufacturing output, whereas the South remains more dependent on agriculture and tourism. Educational institutions in the North also dominate national rankings, attracting international students and investment, while many southern universities struggle with underfunding. That raises the question, can Italy ever truly unite? Well, it's complicated. The Italian government has tried various things, from tax incentives to EU-funded projects, but progress has been slow, and here's why. Corruption and bureaucracy. If there's one thing that keeps the South stuck in a loop, it's the never-ending mess of red tape and corruption. Want to start a business? Good luck with the slow, confusing bureaucracy. Trying to get a development project off the ground? Be prepared for endless paperwork, inefficiency, and in some cases, extra costs, bribes, just to move things forward. The mafia may not run entire cities like they used to, but their influence is still alive in certain industries, from public contracts to local politics. Another problem is the lack of infrastructure. Decades of underinvestment in infrastructure have left the South lagging behind. It's only natural that most businesses simply prefer to set up in the North, where they have better access to European markets and faster transportation networks. Then there is also the brain drain. The South is losing its young, educated workforce due to low job opportunities, poor salaries, and limited career growth. It's a vicious cycle. No skilled workforce means fewer companies want to invest, which means even more people leave. Some argue that giving regions more financial autonomy through a federal system could help the South manage its own resources and make targeted economic decisions. Others believe the solution lies in stronger EU investment, funneling more funds into infrastructure, education, and business incentives to create long-term growth. Either way, one thing is clear: the North isn't slowing down, and the South isn't catching up anytime soon. What do you think? Will Italy ever really be united? Or will the gorge between the two regions continue to widen? Drop your thoughts into the comments. If you want to know more about Mozambique's chances of becoming one of the richest countries in Africa, check out my video about it. Have fun watching it, and see you next time.